Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pathways with me, your host, Todd Allen Baker. First, I just want to thank everyone for coming on and listening to this very first episode of this podcast, Pathways. Um, Hopefully, we can give you some guidance and some knowledge into this performing arts, this crazy industry of what we call the performing arts. And I'm excited to share this journey with you, or this pathway with you. Um, and most of all, I'm excited for our first guest on this podcast, Miss Debra Vega. Um, I've known Debra since 1991. Um, when I became a dance major my sophomore year at Ball State University, she was one of the first people I met, and we hit it off instantly. We discovered we had the same birthday. We're a year apart, but we've always called each other affectionately twin. And to this day, the name has still stuck. She went on after college to have a fantastic career of Broadway tours, Radio City Rockettes, and the list goes on and on. But I'll let her tell you her story. So I would like to bring on Debra Vega. So welcome, Debra. Good to see you. I haven't seen you for so long. So even if it's in this form, it's great to see you.
Oh, Todd, it is so awesome to see you. And I'm so excited to be your first guest. And I'm so proud of you for starting this awesome podcast.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, there was no question at the very beginning when I was like, who's going to be my first guest? Your name just popped into my head. It had to be you. It just
Well,
had
I
to.
am honored. I'm honored.
Oh, it's an honor to have you here. So I'm just going to start with the questions, and I kind of run this as a Q&A, and we'll see where our pathway takes. Um, so what was your earliest memory of wanting to be in the performing arts?
Well, I started dancing very young. I was 4 years old and I started with tap and then kept adding all the different styles, jazz and ballet, point work and on and on. And then when I eventually went to college where I met you, I was going to be an education major because I had taught children as a dance educator and I was like, "Oh, I'm good with kids. I'm going to teach school and be a dance minor." Well, when I was told how little time I would have in my education major for my dance classes, I took a step back and said, no, I think I really need to be a dance major. I had no idea what I was going to do with that path, but I knew I had to do it. And it's through that training, through in college, and through the theater department at Ball State, which is thriving these
Yes,
days.
absolutely. It is thriving. It kind of all got started when we were there. We were kind
I
of in
know.
that very beginning when it started climbing up the ladder there.
Yeah, actually, it was in our time that the dance and theater departments combined, and we put on a chorus line
Yes.
with that really combined feel of like this isn't just the dance department, it's not just the theater department. It was collaborative effort and brought us all together, and that's when the bug for musical theater really hit me. I said, okay, this is what I want to do, and this is the pathway I want to take.
Yeah. I think that if that musical A for dancers is amazingly special anyhow, and as us doing it together, that's still a special memory for me performing with you, um, is doing that, and that was my first show in college as well, and I mean, there's people that I still talk to here that live in Carmel, Indiana, that we still hold that special memory of that show. Um, that's something that will always be deep inside of us, so, yeah, the fact that you mentioned that, that's just a common ground that we will always share.
Yes, and it's such a special show just for dancers and performers, that's so universal. You know, this need, this desire to want to perform, and what we did for love. You know,
Yes.
when that song, and it's that quintessential dancer story. You know, conceived by Michael Bennett. That's just so special and still holds true to this day, and why it's still performed to this day. It's not only universal, I think, to performers, but just to people.
To people in our industry. It doesn't matter what you do in our industry. It's the whole process of auditioning and being vulnerable, and I think that's the beauty of that musical. Um, so what steps did you take in your training, and what got you to find your pathway in this career after college?
Yeah, so upon graduating, it's kind of like, okay, what do I do next? And I knew I wanted to travel, and I had a real desire to see things other than Indiana. And
As we all do.
so a touring company of Sesame Street Live came around, and something fun about that crew is that they would seek out dance studios in whatever city they were performing in, and they happened to choose our dance studio to come take class. And so it was that cross connection. Oh, how do you audition? And so suddenly I'm auditioning for to be a Muppet, basically. And that wasn't something I had could have ever envisioned in my path. But Sesame Street as a child was a very special show to me. And so being a part of that corporation, that company, was really, really cool. And I met some of my very best friends on that first tour. I toured for 9 months, my first tour.
And what
Still,
character did you play?
I played Bert of Bert and Ernie. And then, so I did that first tour, and my friend Phil, who played Ernie, is still one of my very best friends. We lived together in New York when I lived there, and we're we're still good friends. My friend
Yes,
Trisha,
Phil.
who played Grover.
We should have him on. Yes, we need to have all those people
Yeah,
on.
Phil, Trish. Anyway, I'm still friends with all of them,
Uh,
and formative years, when you're just out of college, you're just like 21 and seeing the world. And so we kind of all grew up together.
Now, side note to this, I was still in college, and I was performing at Opryland at the time in between. And I will have to make a confession on this podcast that I was a Sesame Street Live groupie. I followed Deb and her friends from city to city and would stay in her hotel rooms. And that was kind of cool for me because I was working professionally, but it was kind of like my first experience for tour later on when I started touring, that I kind of knew what it was like. I knew what a per diem was. I knew how the hotel life and how you got your food because I absolutely was a Sesame Street groupie.
I love that you brought that up. I mean, it is a big deal when you leave home for the first time, right? College is leaving home, but it's different when you're actually like, okay, I'm living out of a suitcase and packing up my life for a little while, and I'm on tour. It's really different, and your family becomes the show people are your family. And to have someone like Todd, who was my college family, be able to be, have a little glimpse into that along the way, it was really special.
And from that experience, I gained friends and I still communicate with those people as well. So, I mean, it's a great thing, the experience that I had, that I made friends from her. So, that was, yeah, I have to admit, I was a Sesame Street groupie. I watched very many Sesame Street live tours.
Oh, well, we were happy to have you, Todd.
Ah, thank you. Thank you for letting me crash on the floor or wherever I crashed at
Who
that point in
knows?
time. Who
Who knows?
knows? Who knows? Um,
Yeah. So I did a couple of tours. I toured 9 months, and then I took a break, and then did another year tour. And between those two tours, I pretty much saw every state in the United States except for like 5 states. I even got to go to Hawaii for 2 weeks, which was awesome. So it was really wonderful growing time for me. And in that time of touring, because I was able to get close to New York City, which I wasn't really sure where I was going to end up, living and performing one day, but I was very drawn to New York because of the Broadway community. And it enabled me to get close enough to New York on tour to go in and take a class. I would even do a drop into a couple of auditions just to see what it was like to audition in New York. And that was really the first like little light bulb in my head, like, oh, I think I could live here and I think I could audition here. That's really important information for a little girl from Indiana,
Yeah.
going to the big city. Like, oh, I think that I have enough training to compete here. And so those tours enabled me that
Confidence.
experience and
Confidence and
confidence.
experience. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And then from there, where did you progress on from there?
So because of my friend Trish, she was performing, she had left Sesame Street and started doing musicals at a couple of dinner theaters around the country. And I was like, oh, that sounds like fun. So, get out of the costume and actually be myself on stage would be awesome. So I started, let's see, in Pennsylvania, the Dutch Apple Dinner Theater.
Yes, yes.
They they have a sister theater down in Fort Myers, Florida called the Broadway Palm.
I
And so
remember.
yes, so I went, I started at, so I think it was with Will Rogers Follies, which is
I
a show
remember
I've
seeing
done,
you that. I was
which I've
working at Busch Gardens at the time. I
yes.
followed Debra. I was a Debra groupie. Okay, so that I'll just say it. I
Well,
mean,
I was a Todd groupie too, because I did see you at Opryland and I did see you at Busch Gardens and I got to see you do all your flips and all your
and you
amazing.
saw me on tour as well.
I did, yes.
Yeah.
And I mean,
So we
Todd was
follow,
just
we're
like,
groupies. That we're each other's
well,
groupies.
that's what you do, right? You support your friends and you scream out,
I totally
like,
forgot the Broadway Palm until you brought it
oh
up.
my
So
gosh, the
yeah.
Broadway Palm.
Yeah, we were groupies.
Yes, but it was a dream, right? I was still so young and I was learning the ropes. What is it like to be in a
Mm.
musical
Yeah,
and to live in cast housing and work at a dinner theater where sometimes the patrons are awake and sometimes they're real sleepy because they just had a nice big meal.
right.
But also made some wonderful friends in that experience. My friend Doug, my friend Jill. So and I'm still friends with them to this day. So again, those formative years where I am learning the ropes, but also fortifying these like friendships that I'm going to have the rest of my life.
And I think that's an important thing that you touch on, that the people that we work with, uh, yeah, they form our lives and there's a bond, even if you're with them for 6 months. And I think that's one of the most, marvelous things about our career is pretty much now through social media that we all can keep in contact with each other now. And I think that's the importance that a lot of people outside the performing arts don't get, of the closeness that we form with our castmates.
Yeah, they really are your family. And it's such an intense, especially in like you're in a tech period where you're learning the show and you're teching the show and it's all very intense and we're all focused on this big goal and then the show opens and then maintaining the run of the show. I mean we're just there every step and supporting each other through it.
Yeah. And from there, so what happened? How does your story and your pathway progress from the Broadway Palm?
So so in there I did do some summer stock in where was it, Sullivan Little Theater on the Square in Sullivan, Illinois.
Hmm.
I and then I went back to the Dutch Apple, which is in Pennsylvania, and did Crazy for You there. And my not only does my life have a path with Will Rogers Follies, which I think I've done 5 productions of that show.
Hmm.
Crazy for You, I think I've also done 5 productions of Crazy for
Yes.
You, and that's been a huge pathway in my life that kept coming back.
And that you did that with Susan Stroman, correct?
I did eventually, but not at not at the Dutch Apple
Right.
Dinner Theater. So I was performing as Patsy in that production of Crazy for You, but I was feeling very driven to continue auditioning while I was so close to New York, because it was like a 2.5, 3 hour drive to New York. And I'm like, well, on my day off on Mondays, I'm going to go in and just see what happens.
And I
Well,
think you
just,
touch on
yeah,
something important.
yes,
Continue to audition.
yes. It is a
Always
skill.
audition.
It is a skill that needs to be practiced
Yes.
because, some days are good days, some days not. And just that skill of picking up material quickly and, dancing it back to the people in the room. That was, that's, it does take practice for
It does
sure.
take practice. Yes.
Yeah. So this one particular Monday, it must have been just a magical Monday for me. I drove in and the audition that I was really caring about was Crazy for You in Europe. The
Hmm.
European tour was looking for a one person replacement. And so I was like, well, I'm going to go give that a try. It was really my dream to not only travel the country, our own country, but to travel the world. And Europe was high on my list. In fact, when I took class at Broadway Dance Center and some of the big um, studios in New York, I would see it was a big deal at the time to have these tour jackets. And I would
Hmm.
see the dancers come in with their tour jackets and it would say 42nd Street European Tour. And I can remember thinking, I want to do a European tour. And somehow I must have put it out to the universe because, okay, this Crazy for You European tour comes up, but I wanted to warm up for the audition with another audition that was
Right.
happening prior. So that morning I went to a Royal Caribbean call.
I never
Um,
knew that.
I did. I
Okay.
actually,
Yeah.
which cruise line did you work for,
Royal
Todd?
Caribbean.
Oh, no way. I got hired, but I didn't take it because I went. Well, you'll see. So I did the Royal Caribbean call, and I could tell, I don't know if sometimes you can tell the people in the room are like really very I think they liked me. They
Right.
were like
You
really
have the
they were
moments when you're like, okay, I think
I was
I
like,
was
"Oh, I
on.
think they're like really watching me." And I kept making cuts and then I was like, "Oh no, I can't keep making cuts because I got to go to this other audition." So a few of us when we were asked to sing asked if we could go first because we wanted to get to this other audition. And often if you are brave enough to ask, especially if there's a small group of you, they will accommodate. So
Hmm.
the Royal Caribbean folks were so accommodating. Oh yes, of course, we'll let you 5 women go first. And so we all, took our turn to sing, and then we booked it across Times Square to the other audition that we were trying to get to. Made it there in time, and I had a really good audition for that one too. In fact, as it got down to the end, I was making cuts and I went in and sang. Um, I left the room. I just felt like I did everything I could, right? So the audition's over and I'm packing up and there's still a few of us left and someone comes out of the room. I was a Smith then before I got married. So is Deborah Smith here? Is Deborah Smith here? I went by Deborah Denise Smith. Deborah Denise Smith here? Yeah, I'm still here. Could you come in the room, please? P.S. This never happens at auditions. They
Mm-mm.
call you back in the room. Like, what's going on? So they literally give me the offer right there. Do you have a current passport? Why, yes, I do. Would you be able to leave within a week? Mind you, I'm still doing Crazy for You at the Dutch Apple. Why, yes, I would be
It's
able to
always
leave in
yes.
a week.
It's always yes.
Yes. And I thought, how am I going to figure this out? But okay. So yes, I'd be able to leave in a week. Okay, well, we're gonna contact you. And so they needed one person. And out of I don't know how many people auditioned that day, it was me. I got that job. So I had to go back to the Dutch Apple and tell them what had happened. And because I had worked with them so many times, they were so kind and so supportive. The
Because
Prather family.
reputation and work ethic matter in this industry.
Absolutely. And they just asked that I help teach my replacement. So they quickly called in a replacement. I, of course, helped teach her the track. And then within a week, I was on a plane to Germany. Yeah. That's
Wow.
my next step in my
Yeah.
Crazy for You adventure. Yes, the European tour of Crazy for You. Dream come true.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So from there, where did you wind up? I mean, like, how did you, what was your next adventure? How did you wind up? Let's kind of segue. Where did you wind up and how many years were you a Rockette?
Oh
That's the
my
last time I
gosh.
saw you perform.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I went to Europe,
1999.
did the so I did the okay, so it's funny. I kept having this drive like I need to move to New York. I need to move to New York, but jobs just kept taking me not in a different direction. So I was in Europe and I met all these friends who lived in New York and I actually met some Rockettes and they were like, you should have you ever auditioned for the Rockettes? You should audition for the Rockettes. And I was like, yeah, I really want to audition for the Rockettes. I just got to get to New York. So that tour finishes, and I stay with friends in New York about a month. And what do? The Rockette audition hadn't come up yet, but another European tour audition came up for Fame. I want to live forever.
Yeah.
I went back to Europe for a year. So I still wasn't in New York, but I was seeing a whole bunch of European countries on this very well
Part of a
followed.
dancer's passion as well. Fame.
Yeah, Fame. I mean, this show was like a phenomenon over there and in Europe, and it was like this, like there were these groupies outside the door. Like it was cool. It was cool signing autographs and like these people, yeah, whatever you want my
You're a
autograph,
massive deal. You were a
whatever.
massive deal.
It was really fun. It was like living this little dream for a little while. Then finally, I went back to New York after about a year and a half or so on tour and did that Rocket audition. And so let me just say, um, being a Radio City Rocket was a dream, like a childhood dream of mine. I think a lot of young dancers it is. And being from the Midwest, I never saw them in person because we weren't driving to New York City or they weren't really doing the across America tours like they do
Right.
now. So I would see them on the Macy's parade or I'd see them on the Jerry Lewis telethon. And I remember being little and seeing them tap and saying to my parents, oh, look, they're just like me. Not I'm like them. They're like me.
Right.
They tap just like me. So anyway, this was deep. This is deep. It was deep.
Hmm.
So there were about 500 people at this audition. The line wrapped around Radio City. Um, at the
I've
time
watched the
then,
auditions because I follow them and they're
yeah.
super intense.
Oh yeah. So now the process has changed over time, of course, but now the process is a 3-day process. And in my time, it was a 2-day process, which was still quite long. And so you go through audition process the whole day. I was there early in the morning, waiting that line, and then the cuts keep happening. The just a first initial cut and can you dance, and then a next cut was a height requirement, a next cut was a tap, a next cut was a precision jazz, and then when you're just tired you're just beat up tired, they
Beat
teach
up.
you you're just beat up tired but you're still going. You learn the kick routine, you learn a kick line routine. So and then that's not it, you come back the next day and do it all again. So that year I was lucky because they hired 15 new Rockettes to be a part of the Christmas Spectacular. And the first time I auditioned, I got in.
Awesome. I'm getting ready to see it again and I have not seen it since you were in it.
Oh my gosh, your mind's gonna be blown.
I
It
can't
is
wait. I'm
it's a
excited.
it is a spectacular.
I know. I know. And how many years did you do that? And after and each year did you have to re-audition or
Okay.
were you automatically hired back?
Okay. So I I performed 4 seasons, but not consecutively. So I did 2 seasons kind of in my early years in New York, and I did 2 seasons kind of at the end of my time in New York, my end of
Hmm.
my performing career. So it really did bookend my performing career in New York, which is very serendipitous, very
Yeah.
special. Um, so the first 2 years, I did not have to re-audition. At the time, they had a process where they would hire back 80% of the line automatically because they liked what you did, and there's no need to re-audition, just come on back. The other 20%, it's maybe just because there's something they want to look again at you, or maybe you're better suited for the dancing ensemble rather than the Rockettes, because some gals did go between. If they met the height requirement,
Hmm.
they did went between the two. Yeah, just things like that. So a lot of those dancers in the 20% did get hired back, but they just wanted to look at them for another reason, for
Right.
some reason. And then so why the gap? Because I auditioned for a Christmas show across town, which was A Christmas Carol, the musical that was choreographed by Susan Stroman. And this was my first time meeting Susan Stroman. What? Wait, is that true? Is that the first time I met Susan Stroman? No, it was the second time. Because what? I did Crazy for You. I did Crazy for You at Paper Mill
It's always going to
Playhouse.
go back full circle to Crazy for You.
Yes, yes, Crazy for You again. So I in my time in New York, I auditioned for Paper Mill Playhouses, and they're a wonderful theater right in New Jersey, on the other side of the river. So a lot of New Yorkers want to work there because you can live at home in New York
Hmm.
and work there. So they were doing Crazy for You, but it was also being filmed for PBS Great Performances. So it was a very special production. They brought back a lot of the originals from the Broadway production
Yeah, and that's where you
to
worked with Jerry Gallagher, right?
yes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was my
yes.
roommate at one point. Yeah,
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh
I
yeah,
know.
he was our moose. Yes, it was
Yeah,
wonderful. So yeah,
we
he's
could probably do this all day. 6 degrees of separation
I
between you and I.
know, it's so true. So anyway, Susan Stroman came in as so Angelique Ilo, famous dancer and choreographer, look up to her so much. She choreographed the show, but Susan Stroman came in as a consult because it was being preserved for PBS Great Performances, and
Hmm.
Susan Stroman wanted to make sure that it was preserved in her original choreography. So yes, I got to work with both Angelique and Stro, as we call her. And that was my first time meeting Susan Stroman. So she did have some experience with me when I did walk into that Christmas Carol audition. I kind of forgot the order of things, but yes, that's how it went. So that Christmas Carol audition went very well, and let's see, that show ran for 10 years, and I danced in the last 4 years of that 10-year run. Yeah.
That's right.
And then I went back to Radio City for a couple of years too.
Just went across town to the next
Just
Christmas
across
show.
town, one's at Radio City, one's at the theater at Madison Square Garden, this huge 6,000 seat theater that is below Madison Square Garden. It's amazing.
Ah,
Yeah.
and that's where you worked with Dion Ridley, right?
Yes, he was
Yes.
one of the very talented ensemble dancers who had to
He's just very talented all
flip and
around.
jump his brains
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
through that whole show.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've asked him to come on. So
Oh my
hopefully,
gosh.
yeah.
Yes.
So
I follow him on the socials,
on
and
the socials, yeah.
he's busy. He's
He's still
busy.
busy.
He's
He's
still
still
so
working.
busy. I
Yeah.
know.
It's the pathway. It
I
comes
know.
back to what we were
You
talking
never
about. We
know
all
where
have the pathway. He's still going. After, he's probably one of my most favorite people from tour, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. What show did you do with him?
I was
Damn
with Damn
Yankees?
Yankees on the
Yeah.
national tour with him.
That's
Yeah.
what I
Hmm.
thought.
Yep.
Because
I
I'm
saw him
a
a few years
Todd
ago
groupie
up
too.
in Chicago when up in Fort Wayne. I went up to Fort Wayne because he was touring with
My
Chicago. Yeah, I
hometown. My
went to your
hometown.
hometown because he was touring with Chicago.
Oh, sweet. Yeah.
So during this whole time and when you're performing, and it's a general question that I will always ask, because I think we've all been there. Is there any point in time during your career that you felt discouraged or you just totally wanted to give up?
Well,
And
that
how
you know
did you
what?
work yourself? That's always like a formative yes or no question, and pretty much it's always gonna be a yes.
Yeah.
But how did you work yourself out of it, and why were you discouraged, and
Mhm.
how did you work yourself through that? Because I think
So,
that's important for all of us, and I'll say it at every interview because you gotta keep on going.
yeah. So, I mean, earlier we talked about you just gotta keep on auditioning,
Yeah,
because for every, like, who knows, 25, 50 auditions, then one might be the day that you have your golden day. You know, we always tell the stories of, like, when we got the gig, but
right.
there are so many stories when I didn't not when I
Mhm,
did not get the gig. And so, yeah, I had to have a whole, all these other jobs that were designed to pay my rent and allow me to eat while I was going through the audition process because you're not always in a show.
mhm.
Sometimes shows run for 3 months and then you're done. So um, I I did a lot of odd jobs like waitressing and temping and I worked at sample sales and set them up all sorts of things, but I think one of my favorites was, dancing at bar mitzvahs, which is a real
Perfect.
thing
Yeah.
in the New York area and Westchester and Long Island. Bar and bat mitzvahs are a big celebration, and, often DJs are hired, and they have a little dance crew with them to teach these follow along dances, so I did that on the weekends, which allowed my weeks to be free to audition because you have to they're usually during the day, during the week.
And I think
So,
that's a good thing for our listeners to know, um,
yeah.
that there's things to do in between that are performance value, that what you just did, different ways to make money and different gigs, to make money. I used to work where I would do live social events, like big, um, gigs where it was just you came in with a cast, and this was down in Tampa, and we would just learn a couple of shows, and it was for a bunch of business people, and we came in and did a show and
Yeah.
just pieced out, and I don't think people know about those companies and,
Yeah,
like,
I know.
independent gigs to get like that to make some money and still perform.
Yeah. Yeah, they used to be called industrials.
Industrials,
Do they
yes.
still call them that?
I've not really
I
heard of
don't
them, but
know.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So yes, I would do some of those as well.
yeah,
Sometimes a choreographer would call you up and, you just do a quick little I did like little
industrial.
fashion shows
Yeah,
and yeah, for like a corporation or something as
yeah,
entertainment.
as entertainment, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
But fun, fun to get paid for what you love to do and but the side jobs actually are helpful in just life skills. My temp job, I got really good at typing and just word processing and that's just stuff that, you need to have computer skills in this life.
mhm,
So that helped me kind of hone those in. Um yeah, and just like I don't know, just life skills, ways to make money. Waitressing is always very humbling,
right,
but a good thing to do that keeps your day free so that you're going to usually waitress in the evening. So, yeah, got to
and
keep the audition times open.
when during all this time, did you have a good support system? Who was your support system during these hard times that we always have? There's always rejections and there's always, no's and there's always yeses. But during the down times, especially when you're away from home and you have your family in New York, or family wherever you're at that moment, um, who was that support system for you?
Well, early on, it was my friend Trisha Turek, who
Mm-hmm.
is still one of my very best friends.
Yes,
And
Trish.
we were roommates when I first moved to New York. And then she moved out of New York, and I moved in with Phil, who we mentioned
Mm-hmm.
earlier, Phil Fabry. And he was my roommate. So when I lived with Trish, I had like six roommates. We were in a huge apartment way uptown in Washington Heights. But then I wanted to be closer to where I was auditioning and doing shows. So Phil and I moved into a teeny little apartment with our two cats in the Hell's Kitchen area. And Phil, I would say, was really my anchor. he would
Mhm.
hear me warm up. I mean, poor thing, I had to get up early and warm up my voice and whatever, bend over and stretch in our teeny tiny apartment. And he just was, cheering me on always. So I appreciate him so much. Still to this day.
To this day, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, During this time, did you ever have a backup plan? Is there something else that you wanted to do, or you had, that plan in your pocket, as we say in the industry?
You know what? My back pocket plans manifested over time. When I was in New York, I was very focused on I wanted to perform.
Mm-hmm.
And so I made that my priority and goal. Um, and then as time went on, I met my future husband, and
Mm-hmm.
my future husband, who's now my current husband. But at the time I was living in New York and he was from Massachusetts, which is where I live now. Um, and so your priorities start to shift, right? And you decide, okay, my next life path is going to be with this person. And it's not about performing anymore. It's about love and building a family and having a home base where I'm not traveling around all the time. So that shift was it, it's
It's a
all
natural
timing.
occurrence.
Yeah, it's timing too. It's like it
Yeah.
happened at a time in my life. I met him at a time in my life. His name's Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
He, was the time where I was like kind of getting tired. I tired of the the push, the
Mm-hmm.
everyday push of like the next job, the next job, the next job. It does wear on you over time. And I lived in New York 10 years and
Chasing that next gig.
chasing the gigs. And sometimes you
Yeah.
get them and just had all these wonderful life experiences. But then the shift happened. And so it just so happens that Aaron is a yoga teacher. Well, he does many things, but
Right.
he had just finished his teacher training, and I was very much into yoga at the time. It's what got me through my years in New York, just that like practice. And we were like, we should open a yoga studio. So we got married, and our plan was, okay, we're gonna do this yoga business together. So that was kind of how the next path unfolded.
Yeah.
And
That's
there's
a
been a lot more paths since then, but that
right.
was kind of what happened next after New York.
And do you guys still have that yoga studio? Yeah.
Yeah, so we still have it as a yoga business, but we have transitioned to a mobile model rather than a brick and mortar,
Mm-hmm.
physical space, which we kind of took a lesson from the food truck era. That everyone,
Yeah.
all the restaurants are shifting to something that's more cost effective.
Yeah.
And
Clever. Yeah.
yes, so we see ourselves as a food truck kind of food truck yoga, where we bring the yoga to you. It's called Vega Yoga Mobile. So I
Go
still
ahead and
to this
plug that
day,
again. Plug that again if you're
oh,
in the area.
Vega Yoga Mobile,
Oh, there you
home
go.
based in
Make sure you get your plug in there.
Holyoke, Massachusetts. But I travel all around the Holyoke area. It's near Springfield. Some people know Springfield. It's the bigger city near us. But all that whole area around Holyoke, Springfield, Chicopee, South Hadley. And I teach, oh my gosh, I teach so much yoga on site now because it's just easier for
Hmm.
many populations for me to come to them.
Right.
Older populations, or I teach people with special needs. I teach folks with brain injuries. I kind of found my niche in helping folks that just need a pathway to move.
Yeah. See, we're bringing it back full circle. Always a
Yeah,
pathway. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and do you still teach dance, or what do you do on other
Yes.
than the yoga?
Yeah, so yoga was one of the paths, but I've
Hmm.
always kept dance in my life because I just can't help it.
We can't.
It,
It's in us,
it's
right?
part of me forever, forever. So I've found a home teaching at, well, I've taught many places over the years here in this area, but I currently teach at Mass Academy of Ballet, which is a pre-professional ballet program, but I teach all of their jazz classes. So
Okay.
I just give them a different style of movement within their training. And then more recently, I'm in my third year teaching at CLI Conservatory, which is the brainchild of Teddy Florence, who
Hmm.
is, I think, well known in the
Can you tell
dance.
our listeners what that is? I
So,
know what it is, but you can go ahead and kind of plug that in what it is because our
yeah,
students take that and do the courses when it first came out.
yeah. So CLI started as CLI Studios, which is an online um, it's an online network where you can subscribe and take classes from all of these different amazing teachers from all over the convention world.
Hmm.
And Teddy's idea was to bring the conventions, kind of like the food truck, bring the conventions to you.
Yeah.
Because so often, like trying to travel, it's not always easy for a studio to get somewhere. So this allows you to take class in your home. And then from that sprouted CLI Conservatory, and CLI stands for Create, Learn, Inspire. And now they're in their third year of the conservatory. I've been there all the 3 years, and I'm one of the resident faculty. So I teach all of the musical theater, not all, but I teach musical theater classes. And within that, I teach a little dance history of the movement. It's one of my passions to pass the history on and teach some of this iconic Broadway rep, so it doesn't get lost. I want it passed to those next
Yeah. We got to
generations,
stick to our roots, right?
like a chorus line, like a
Yeah. We got to
chorus.
stick to our roots. Yeah.
Send it, pass it on. Yes, and I've taught a little yoga for them as well. Um, but it's a wonderful pre-professional program that it's a year long, or not a year, but a like a 9 month
Right.
period, like a school year,
Hmm.
where you train with top professionals across the industry. And I think it's where dancers really figure out their their path
Right.
because they are getting exposed to concert dance, a lot of contemporary movement, but they're also getting exposed to commercial dance, hip hop, working on in film, and then theater dance as well. A bunch of wonderful professionals from New York and all around come in and teach. Yeah, and LA teachers as well
Hmm.
come and teach in all of those different styles. So it's a pretty unique program.
Yeah. So throughout all this extensive career that we've been through in this almost hour, what is your favorite memory? What's like one of your what sticks with you?
Oh my gosh, that's a tough
I know it's a
question.
tough one. It's a tough one.
Yeah. I mean, I think it comes back for me to those friendships. I
Yeah.
mean I have a lot of memories that are like really funny memories that are I just love those show stories from
Hmm.
those bloopers that happen on stage, live theater.
Yeah.
I could go on and on about those, but what means the most to me are those lifelong friendships, and how, like you and I, it's when we meet, it's like no time has passed,
Hmm.
even though
Absolutely.
30 years have passed. And they're just, those people are just special and in my heart always. And we're such an important part of my just growing up and becoming who I am today. So I think that's probably my favorite memory.
Uh,
All of the friends, the
all the
friendships.
friends. Yeah.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
like that answer. I like that answer a lot. Um, so what are your kind of plans for the future? Or are you just kind of a fly by the seat of your pants kind of girl, or do you have any
No, I'm a
plans?
planner. I'm
You're a
a
planner.
planner. So, so I'm a mom,
Hmm.
and I have grown stepdaughters who are wonderful, and then I have a young son who's about to turn 10, and he has taken a liking to, oddly enough, theater. I don't know
Hmm.
how that could have happened,
Right.
but he's a theater kid and loves singing, loves dancing, loves doing shows. Um, so in the past many years, I've tried to figure out how can I get paid to do theater shows that involve him. So I do a lot of choreography in the area, different community theaters, schools, and try to bring him along in all of
Hmm.
my endeavors. And then the other thing that happened just a couple of years ago, we were looking for a program. My son's name is Odin. We were looking for a summer theater program for him, and finding that the ones in the area that were very popular and well recognized were filling up. They just filled up super fast, and couldn't even get in. And he turns to me and says, "Mom, why don't you make your own program?" And so that turned into now I'm in my second year of a program we named together Broadway Brings Joy.
I
And it
like that.
started as a
Yeah.
little, yeah, it started as a camp and then turned into a weekly program through the school year. And then one camp turned into two camps last year, this past summer. And now we're in our second year of um, after school programming. And it's not just for kids. So that's the cool thing. We're doing ages 7 to 17 in our
Hmm.
youth and teen program. But I have this whole lovely contingency of adults
I've
who,
seen your adults.
oh my
Yes.
gosh, they're so
And
cute.
they
I
are
love
living their best
them.
lives. They're
They
absolutely living their best
we
lives with you.
Yeah, we're doing Chicago
Oh, they love
choreography,
it.
all that stuff that I feel like is a little mature for some of the
Hmm.
young students, but still choreography and dances I want to do and sing. Oh, it's been so fun to work with the adults in
Yes.
the area. And maybe, they used to sing and dance when they were younger and they're just trying to get back to it, or maybe they've never done it, but we have a blast. We have a blast. Yeah.
Oh, great. So, what are your final words of wisdom? What can you give our listeners?
Yeah.
Something that they can take with them. What's your wisdom, my
Yeah.
twin? What's your
So
wisdom?
I was just talking the other day to my students at the CLI Conservatory about this. And I was explaining to them that sometimes it's not always about getting the gig, because some of the audition experiences that I've had are so special.
Hmm.
I've been in the room with Anne Reinking. I mean, she was a living legend, and
Legend.
right, and had an intimate audition experience with her. All that time spent with Susan Stroman, and I'll tell you this little sidebar. There was a very big hit show that Susan Stroman had much after near the time I worked with her, called The Producers.
Yeah.
And it was like the Hamilton of the early 2000s. Like you couldn't get a ticket. It was like the big hot show. And I was up for the national tour. And some of my friends and I, we were like down to the end, like down, down, down to the end. They hired 6 women, and there were 8 of us left. Good odds, right? Good
Yeah.
odds. We were already figuring out who's going to room with who. And on that day they were doing the phone calls. Oh, call me if you, that was before everyone was texting. So call me if you get a call. Okay, I'll call you. And the day went on, and I did not get a call. And friends were calling me, did you get a call yet? And no, I didn't yet. Oh, you will, you will. And I never did. So of those 8 women, I was one of the 2 that did not get hired. Um, but even though that broke my heart, like I just couldn't believe it. I just really thought the stars had aligned with that audition. That same year that I would have been on tour is the year I met my husband. And had I been on that tour, I would have never, ever met the love of my life, had the son, amazing son that I have, and stepdaughters, and have this whole beautiful life that I've been
Yeah.
able to
The
create.
right pathway.
Yes.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's okay if that door closes,
Hmm.
because I promise a path that you could have never, ever imagined will open up.
Ah, see, and this leads me to the line that I will end every show with that yeah, see, like, yeah, you're my twin. You're my twin for a reason, because it just led right into that. Was like a perfect segue. segue there. Remember, pathways are like the path when the sun touches the water. You don't know where it leads or ends, but you never know until you walk that path.
Mm, I'm gonna let that one sit with me.
You're gonna, yeah, let that simmer for a minute.
Let that simmer for a minute.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's been wonderful to see you and have you on.
Thank
And
you
thank
so
you for giving
much,
me my first
Todd.
experience. I know. Um,
Well, this was fun. It was like old friends catching up.
I know. Maybe we should do a group chat at some point and Zoom all the people and have a 6 degrees of separation in.
Oh, please. Don't even tempt me. That sounds so much fun.
I know. That'd be like a big reunion, like when everyone was having reunions with their cast during COVID
I
and everyone was
know.
zooming in and
I
having
know.
that was I had a couple of them and that was actually super cool and
No, me
special to have
too.
all
Me
those
too.
reunions. Yeah.
That's the beauty of technology,
Yeah.
actually. COVID, as challenging as that time was, I think taught us different ways to connect.
And it
And
taught us to bring a connect and it taught us even now to be able to continue our careers and teach online when we never thought that was
it's
imaginable. So, I
true.
mean,
It's true. Some of my classes, my yoga classes are still hybrid to this
mhm,
day because folks just want that convenience of rolling out of bed in their
yeah,
pajamas.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't blame them, and I've taught dance classes virtually too. I've taught, like, all over the place. Actually, I got to connect with my cousin. My cousin has a daughter who is in musical theater, lives in Arizona, across the country, but she's auditioning for musical theater school, so I helped her with that via Zoom.
yeah.
Like, beautiful ways that I can connect with my family and
Help out
yeah,
and give it back
give back.
and
Yeah.
pass the gift. That's what we're
Pass it
supposed to
on.
do. Pass the
I
craft.
feel very driven to pass it on. I'm
Uh,
happy to do it.
and thank you so much for today. And thank you guys for joining us on our first uh, podcast of Pathways. And, like, share, subscribe, and keep on listening. And we will be back with another episode next week. Thanks, Deb. Good to see you. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Dad. I appreciate you.
Love you.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.